Welcome back to the Covenant Eyes podcast. It's Karen here. We're so glad to have you joining us on the podcast where we are all about empowering you to live a life with integrity in a digital space. We are rooted in biblical truth, and we have got Rob Stoddard back in the co-host seat. Rob, you've been on a whirlwind tour at conferences. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, a little tired, but doing well. Sun's shining. It's a good day.
Well, we have a great guest joining us today for a really powerful conversation. You want to go ahead and give him an introduction?
We do. Our guest today is Kyle Enns. Kyle is part of the Kingdom Sexuality podcast. Kyle, welcome to the Covenant Eyes podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Kyle, could you just start out and just tell us a little bit about your story and your journey and what really led you to this ministry that you're doing now?
Yeah, for sure. I like to start my journey in Moses Lake, Washington, and the year is 2008. I was fortunate enough to play some pretty high-level baseball through high school. And so I'm from Canada. So to play the good teams, we had to come down to your country and play the Americans. So we were in Moses Lake, Washington for a tournament, and I was a rookie on the team, and we were 4 guys to a room. So there's 2 queens in the room. So if you're the most senior guy in the room, you get your own bed. The middle 2 guys share a bed, and the rookie gets the floor. So there I am, sleeping on the floor or getting ready to go to bed. And my room was the room. Everyone hung out in our room. And in the corner of the room are 8 of my teammates, and they're all standing around a laptop, and they're watching porn together. And they look over at me and they say, "Hey, Enns, you want to come watch with us?" And I say, "No, guys, I don't do that." And it was the most powerful moment of hypocrisy in my entire life because, truth be told, I really wanted to go. That's exactly where I wanted to be because I was so deeply rooted in a pornography addiction at that point in my life. I was exposed first at age 11. I was at a friend's house and he pulled out a Hustler magazine, and that was my first exposure. And then I also had, back in the days of dial-up internet and pop-ups, I had a pop-up come up. And I can't tell you exactly which was first exposure, but I don't remember. They were very close together. So those were my first 2 exposures. And it didn't turn into a full-blown addiction then, but I remember at that point being like, my body and my brain like this. And slowly as I got older and mobile technology and cell phones became a thing, I would say like once I got to high school, kind of grade 8, 9, it really started to become a thing. I remember sneaking onto the computer and all that kind of stuff. And then I got my own, I think I got an iPod Touch, whatever the first iPod was that had a screen. I remember having that in my room with internet. And that's when it really got bad. And then, yeah, kind of just through high school, full-blown addiction. I remember I was dating a girl in high school, and we dated for almost 5 years. And I remember at one point telling her about this, and she didn't seem to care. And I was like, I think you're supposed to be mad at me right now. Why are you like, she kind of had I know everyone kind of does that. And I remember that like really affecting me. Like, no, that's not like I knew that's not the right response. That's not how things are supposed to be. And, so yeah, we went on and eventually she broke up with me after high school, and I met my wife in like summer of 2013 and she was in a relationship at the time. And I remember finding out through some mutual friends that she had ended that relationship. And so it was kind of like a slid into her DMs moment of us getting together. But she had a really wise mentor. And this mentor had told her, before you guys even think about getting married, because we had talked once we started dating, like, hey, we both came out of 5-year relationships. Like, we're not going to just date forever. If we know, we're just going to get engaged, get married. And so she said, before you guys do that, you guys both have to go through Freedom Session. So Freedom Session was a program that local churches in my area were offering. And it's basically a 12-step program that is biblically grounded and is for anything. So it's not just for pornography, it's for anything. You had people in there who had past trauma. You had people in there who, I just want a closer relationship with Christ, and everything in between. And I remember going through that program, and it was like the best premarital counseling you could ever have, because all your stuff is on the table. Like, there's nothing in the dark. There's even a section in there where it's like, okay, now write down the stuff that you purposely didn't write down in the last section. It's like your black box, right? So everything's out on the table. And anyways, through that, I found freedom. Like, I was free. I 100% felt and experienced freedom for the first time. And we got married September of the following year. And I would say for the first 6-ish months of marriage, I was great. I kind of went into marriage with that, like, sex is going to fix it mentality. And shocker, it didn't. And it kind of slowly started creeping back into my life. This is now 2015, and I'm kind of back into full-blown addiction. And it was this kind of teeter-totter of do good for a while, confess, forgiveness, do good for a while, confess, forgiveness. And then everything kind of came to a head. May 2021, I had a bad covenant eyes report that week that my wife saw, and she said, "You need help." And I said, "Yeah, I do." Like, I didn't fight her on it. I said, "Yeah." And so I reached out to a counselor that I had seen in the past. I said, "Hey, who can help me with this?" And he directed me to a guy locally who runs a recovery program for men. He also runs one separately for women, but I got connected in that program, and I'm still in it. I still do the weekly meetings. I think it's an excellent program, but May 2021 was kind of my turnaround date of, hey, it's time to seek actual freedom.
Thank you for sharing your testimony. Thank you for being vulnerable.
Yeah, of course. And then through that, so I was a year and a bit clean, and my wife had shared this Instagram account with me called Kingdom Sexuality. And I was like, hey, this is really cool. Like, I love what these girls are doing. They're trying to, bring light into these dark places that the church has not talked about for years. And one of their Instagram stories was about having a day dedicated to the men, because they recognized that a third of their followers were men, and they were very women-based. And I had felt this kind of calling to using my story to do more good and to kind of help other men out there that are in this situation. So I just reached out. I said, hey, I saw this. If you guys ever want a guy to actually join the team and bring that perspective, like, I would be very interested. And they got back to me, and we had a couple meetings, and they're like, yeah, like, we would love for you to join the team. And that's kind of how I got in. It was just an Instagram message.
Wow. That's incredible that your journey really led you to a place now where you're helping others find freedom that you're enjoying. But let's kind of dive in a little bit to the story. I mean, you are not uncommon with early exposure to pornography, and it really sunk its clutches into you at a young age. Talk to us a little bit about, the social norm. You mentioned your girlfriend being like, oh, everybody. And we hear that all the time with young people, that really it's kind of a culture of it being okay. How did that impact you as a young person, knowing that you knew that it was wrong, you didn't want to be addicted, but the culture around you said it was fine? How did that make you feel?
Yeah, it was this weird dichotomy, because part of me felt like I was the only one. I didn't feel like any other. I felt like I was the only Christian who had this problem. And it was this secular problem that all of my high school friends had. And so it was this weird thing of, I know it's wrong because they're doing it. And so it kind of led me to this place of, I just turtled. And I didn't talk about it. I hid it. Like, I didn't think anyone else was out there that was struggling with this. And I didn't think that there was anyone out there that could even help me. Like, I remember my parents, like, they'd never talked to me about pornography. So when I finally got to a point where 2010, I was fed up with this, I went to them. I said, hey, there's this product out there called Covenant Eyes. I need it because this is what I'm going through. And so, yeah, the early exposure really messed with my mind, because it led me to this place of like solitary confinement of my mind, basically.
Yeah, we see that so much, and so many people are just buried in that shame in silence. At Covenant Eyes, and we really are all about accountability. We feel like a confession, walking alongside each other, that really is the key here. Can you talk a little bit about how that played a role in your recovery, and how important that is for people who are struggling or maybe just sitting in silence and shame around this issue?
Yeah, for sure. I like to use the acronym PACE, P-A-C-E. So P is pray. I think you need to be praying and you need other people praying for you. A is accountability. So you need accountability, real accountability, like accountability that other men, guys are going to ask you the tough questions and kick your butt a little bit when you're out of line. C is confession. So you need to confess and confess fully and explicitly. And then E is eliminate access. And that's where I think Covenant Eyes really does a really good job at covering A and E. And eliminate access doesn't just mean get Covenant Eyes. For some people, it might mean get rid of your smartphone. It might mean you have to put very strict boundaries in place. There's lots of guys in my men's group, in my recovery group. One of their boundaries is they only have cold showers because the shower is a place for them. And they don't want to spend any more time in there than they need to. Some guys don't bring their phone in the bathroom. Some guys, don't watch certain shows without their wife present. Like, you need to be very, very intentional with your boundaries. And chances are you're being too lenient on yourself.
Most people don't know how to measure whether porn is a problem. Well, now you can. Hi, I'm Mike Stone, producer of the Covenant Eyes podcast. At Covenant Eyes, we have created a short, free, and confidential assessment called the P.A.U.S test. That's Porn Addiction Use Severity. It's not about judgment, it's about understanding. So in just a few minutes, you'll get clarity on where you stand and what your next step could be. So take the free test now at cvnteyes.co/test. That's cvnteyes.co/test. Super short, super simple. Now you've got nothing to lose and everything to gain. Now back to the show.
That's really good advice. I love that too, the pace. I think that's a great way to kind of remember all the different steps. So with your work with Kingdom Sexuality, you guys are tackling those big questions. You're really, a lot of their work is focused around helping women and navigate these challenges and things, but your work specifically is supporting men. So talk to us a little bit about what you're doing specifically with the ministry and how you're serving Christians and helping them find this freedom. What exactly is your role and what do you do for them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so our founder, Alana, she says it like this. She says, we're shining light into the darkness. And like I mentioned earlier, a lot of people have never heard this conversation, right? They didn't have this conversation growing up from their parents. They didn't have this conversation growing up from their church. So we aim to be a safe space where you can come have this conversation. We're kind of like your older brother or older sister who's going to have this conversation with you for the first time. And we're the safe place where you can ask the really awkward questions that nobody else is answering or that you don't feel asking anyone else. So one of the things I think that really is impactful from our ministry is we don't shy away from anything. There's no topic that you can't ask us about. Like I had very recently, 2 days ago, I had a senior member of our church come to me and say, hey, I was looking at some of your guys' podcast titles and wow, you guys don't shy away from nothing. And then the week before, my wife was out with some girlfriends and one of them was not a believer and they all know about what I do. And she started scrolling and she's like, you guys talk about this and you're Christians? And it's like, so that's kind of where we're coming from is like, you want to talk about oral sex? We'll talk about it. You want to talk about orgasms? We'll talk about it. You want to talk about anything to do with sex? We're a safe space where you guys can come and listen and get biblically grounded advice on that topic.
No, that's so important. We need to talk about those things. When we don't, then we just get buried deeper and deeper in shame. So you mentioned a little bit ago, that when you went into marriage, you really kind of thought that these issues would go away. That's one of the myths we hear at Covenant Eyes all the time, is that marriage will take care of this problem, but it doesn't. It doesn't. There's a much deeper issues going on there. So as you counsel men that are getting ready or going into marriage, what are some of the principles? God designed us for intimacy in our marriage. What kinds of things can you help men deal with or be prepared for in that situation?
Yeah. I've heard it said like this: pornography addiction is not an addiction to sex, it's an addiction to variety. And so once you get into marriage and you've experienced your wife for several months, your brain wants something new. And that's why you tend to go back to pornography, because it's that addiction to the variety. It's not addiction to sex, right? Because if you got a healthy marriage, you're going to have a good amount of sex, hopefully. And so it's the variety that your brain wants. And you can have any variety of sex you want on the internet these days. So I'm a huge fan of really good premarital counseling. Like, you need to have really, really strong premarital counseling where the pastor or the counselor, whoever's doing your stuff, is not going to shy away from this topic in detail. And you and your to-be spouse need to be very vulnerable and open and have conversations, especially around expectations, or as we call it, sexpectations. Because you are going to be surprised how different the expectations are. And this will be kind of the first instance of coming to a compromise. And the rest of your marriage is going to be compromising and serving one another. So having expectations very clearly laid out, because as we say on our podcast, unspoken expectations are unmet expectations. So your spouse cannot and will not and never will be able to read your mind. So you need to voice that and verbalize that and make sure that you are on the same page from night one. So yeah, that would be my absolute number one thing, is have realistic and very clearly explicit expectations for one another.
I want to pause where you mentioned the premarital counseling. So, there are some churches that are doing that and doing that really well. But I know that, just based on the number of churches that are not talking about pornography and sexual brokenness, there's probably a good portion of churches that don't have an offering that really goes as deep as what you experienced pre-marriage. What can we do for the church to help them, get programs like that in place? Because that seems like a very important, first step for couples going into marriage. I mean, nowadays we have 44% of Christian women struggling with pornography, according to Barna. So often we're going to find marriages that have both the man and the female struggling with pornography. So now it's an even bigger issue. So how do we get to a place where the church can really be prepared to help people going into marriage?
Yeah, I think the church needs to humble themselves a little bit and realize that they need help too. And I mean, I'm sure you guys have tons of resources for churches. We last year put out a resource called Starting Life Together, and it's a bundle of 3 guides, and it covers the engagement period, the wedding night specifically, and then the newlywed period. And it's all about sex, questions to ask, really awkward questions. What happens if it sounds funny? What do we do then? Like, really, we didn't leave anything out. And we've had really encouraging feedback from that, because we've had pastors say, hey, can I use this in my premarital counseling? And so by no means did we set out thinking that this was going to be a premarital counseling thing for the pastors. We just thought, there are couples out there who don't do premarital counseling. At least we can give them a resource. It's like, hey, please at least just do this, right? Do something. And the feedback from the churches has been, hey, thank you so much. Like, I use this all the time now. And so I think churches need to remember that they can't do everything. There are a lot of churches that do a lot of things well, but this is one thing where a lot of them are just ill-equipped. And I think the church needs to humble themselves and say, hey, I need help. Can you help me? And that's not just us. There's a million resources out there. I don't care which one you use, but seek out something, because your congregation needs it.
according to Barna, just recently this last year, only 10% of churches really have any ministry around the issue of pornography. So, yeah, there's so much more that we need to do and help the church with. So, Kyle, we often have a lot of listeners who are here listening that may be struggling silently. What's one kind of final piece of advice you would give to any listener here that really needs that help, that next step?
First off, God cares. He cares about what you're going through. He cares about your marriage. He cares about your sex life. Like, don't think that he is distant. He is near, and he deeply cares, and he wants your freedom more than you want your freedom, right? It is available to you. A lot of times, yes, of course, God can heal you of that addiction in an instant, but in my experience, it doesn't go that way, right? It takes work. It takes time. It takes intentionality. So to the addict that is listening who feels hopeless, one, I want you to know that there is hope, right? I have started my journey in May of 2021. Yes, I have relapsed since then, but I have stayed the course. I have gone back to my programs. I have done the stuff, right? Do the stuff that you need to do to get help. And the other thing is, the betrayed spouse often doesn't get talked about enough. And so if you're listening to this and you are the betrayed spouse, we see you, we hurt with you. Everything you're experiencing is true and real, and you're not wrong for feeling that way. But both of you individually need to get help. As you guys have heard me talk already, I'm a huge fan of counseling. Go get professional help. I like to say that every person, addict or betrayed spouse, needs 3 people in their life. They need the professional, they need the mentor, and they need the friend. And if you've got those 3 people in your life who you've chosen well, and they actually care about you, and they actually do the things that you've asked them to do, you will find freedom. Both of you will find freedom. And so, yeah, to those people, I would say, God cares. It will take work on your part, but don't lose hope, because freedom is available to you.
That is so encouraging. And thank you for bringing up the betrayed spouse as well. I think that's so important and often overlooked in the journey, because there are 2 people who are wounded in this journey that need help. So I love that. Speaking of your spouse, is she at all involved in the work of the ministry and supporting Kingdom Sexuality, or does she assist in that way with spouses and things?
She doesn't do anything formally. She's come on the podcast a few times to talk about our journey. So she did 2 episodes in the beginning about what it was like going through this as the betrayed spouse, which was really powerful. A lot of women listened to those episodes and really loved them and just felt seen. And then after I had my one relapse, we did another episode talking about how we went through that and navigated that process. And so she came on for that episode as well. But formally, no, she doesn't do anything through the ministry. She's just kind of there as needed to help with anyone that wants advice.
Yeah. Well, and sharing her story and her experiences on the podcast, I think probably was more profound, to so many listeners. That touches so many people. Well, Kyle, if our listeners want to get connected with you and your work and connect with your ministry, how do they find you?
Yeah, so you can go to kingdomsexualityministry.com. That's our website. You will find tons of resources there. You will find all of our social links there. We're super active on Instagram. That's probably the best place to follow us socially. It's just at Kingdom Sexuality. And yeah, we put out tons of good content there 6 days a week. We take Sundays off. And yeah, come please connect with us. We'd love to engage with you.
Oh, great. Thank you, Kyle. We'll put those links in our show notes. So again, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your ministry, your openness, your honesty. That means so much to people. So to our listeners, thank you for joining us and watching. Please like and share this and
eliminate access
to the next episodes.